This week, questions will be raised in Parliament over the social impact of closing the Port Talbot steelworks.
It comes after 1,500 workers based in Port Talbot voted in favour of strikes for the first time in more than 40 years.
Well, joining us live from Port Talbot this morning is talkTV correspondent Nick Ellaby. Nick, how have locals coped with the closure of these furnaces? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Good morning, Jeremy. You know, the word I keep hearing here in Port Talbot and the area around here is devastating. People tell me that these furnaces closing down will be devastating not only for Port Talbot but also for the surrounding area as well, because there are so many jobs that rely on these steelworks being in use. You can see these two blast furnaces behind me. They've been running for 70 years. There's been a steelworks here since 1953. So you're talking about most people around here have never seen this place not at full capacity. But the problem is, as I say, these two blast furnaces used in the steel making process just by themselves are creating 3% of the country's CO2 emissions. And the government and also the steel companies are trying to decarbonise the steel making process. The other problem is this place is running at a loss. So Tata Steel, the company that runs it, is going to change it to an electric arc furnace. Now, the problem with that electric furnace is that it employs fewer people. They're talking about losing 2,800 jobs from this steelworks, and then that will have a huge knock-on effect in Port Talbot and the wider community. There have been protests about it in Westminster and around here as to how it's been handled as well. But as I say, people telling me it could be devastating not only for Port Talbot but also this whole area of South Wales. We've been speaking to people in Port Talbot this morning about what would happen if these blast furnaces are shut down. Here's what they told me.
Port Talbot will be nothing left of Port Talbot if that shuts down.
How are people feeling at the moment?
I think everybody's a bit shocked and a bit down and wondering what's going to happen next, kind of thing, you know. I mean, things are expensive anyway, and then losing your generation of job kind of thing here. And then the skyline just isn't going to be the same without those two things flashing at night and the flames coming up, which is quite incredible.
So, yeah, first of all, what impact is the closure of the furnaces going to have on this area?
I think it's going to have a big impact, I think, the closure of the furnaces. You know, businesses, small businesses, they are going to be impacted, but everyone's just got to persevere, and I think we'll make it through it in the long run. Like, do you know what I mean? Hard times, but this place was built on hard times, and it's built strong people.
So that last guy there talking about the impact on small businesses. We can get into that now. I've got Ben Cotton with me, who's the head of Wales for the Federation of Small Businesses. Ben, people here talking about for every job, you know, you can times it by 4 for contractors. We're talking about 1,300 jobs. What's the impact going to be for this area of South Wales?
It could be significant. This is a huge economic ecosystem, and it's an ecosystem that draws in many, many businesses. So it's not just those employees at the plant that are affected, but the employees and business owners in the many, many small businesses that are within the supply chain, but also within the town. You know, you've got pubs, cafes, you've got shops in the town that depend on the thousands of people coming through the gate at Port Talbot. The future for them is very, very uncertain, and for many, as you say, they have known nothing different, and they've grown their business around this site. So it's very uncertain, very difficult time for those.
What's the feeling? What are people telling you about how they're feeling about it?
Very uncertain. This has been months of speculation. It's a long, drawn-out process, and we're yet a long way from the final picture as to what's going to happen here at Port Talbot. And in the meantime, there are decisions that businesses are having to make about their future. So it's deeply, deeply uncertain. And first and foremost, this is a personal story for many, many people, but it's also an economic story. So we need certainty for the businesses in the supply chain. We need certainty of some description for the businesses in the town as to what happens next.
You're talking about certainty. What kind of a plan are we looking at? What would you like to see happen here at the steelworks?
Well, obviously we want to retain as much capacity within the site as possible, but we know that there's great engineering expertise on site and in the skills supply chain. So that can be used then for the next story about decarbonisation, which is things like the floating offshore wind in the Celtic Sea. That will require engineering skill set, that will require innovation that we know exists at this site. So we need to accelerate those plans to make sure that businesses have something to go to next, and that we start to tool up to make sure that there is a viability for this site and the skills that are dependent on it.
Ben, thank you so much. Also, Ben Cottam, head of Wales Federation of Small Businesses there, talking about new projects for this place, maybe looking into floating offshore wind. I mean, you know, renewable energies, wind farms, very, very steel hungry. And also, if you're talking about amping up production and military defence spending, then the UK is going to need to be able to produce its own steel if it's not going to be beholden to those price rises bringing in steel from abroad. But here in South Wales, the area potentially could be devastated by the closure of these two blast furnaces behind me, guys.
Nick, thank you very much indeed. Really interesting. Nick Ellaby from Port Talbot. They're just really discussing how, you know, if an area relies, you think of Cornwall and tin mining, right? Gone. You think of steelworks there. You think of Sheffield as well. It's not great in many parts of the country. Thank you to Nick Ellaby.